Tom, is that right? If you get married,
you'll know all the right things to do by then.
Are you given like a dictionary or encyclopedia on how to deal with the opposite sex? Is that how that works?
Good morning, guys. I'm not going to wade into this.
Yeah, we just put you in the box right away, didn't we?
Yeah. No, man, I've been married for 31 years.
Yeah,
man.
yeah, you got it all figured out, right? No, man, me either. So.
Still working on it. Yeah. Well, Tom, let's talk some baseball tomorrow, and Dave will talk with the Arkansas media later on today. Who are you expecting to start tomorrow against Grand Canyon?
Well, obviously they could go any direction they wanted, but I think you've gotten enough. You certainly got a lot of mileage in the first half of the season out of the rotation that you use. So he's a senior. Connor Noland, I don't know how they do anything different. The good thing being, if you go in the normal rotation, then you could have potential guys like Will McIntyre or Cole Ramage for longer start or longer relief appearances. Could be real long gap guys for you. I mean, I don't think depth of pitching is going to be what, ultimately, I don't think depth of pitching is going to be a negative for Arkansas. I think it's going to be a positive. They just got to get better starts out of their starters, and I think it's going to be clutch hitting that determines, and honestly, some defense. I mean, they were shoddy on defense in Alabama. So I think those two items are going to be more important than, the pitching staff.
So the fact that there isn't, and you answered the question that Ty gave you, correct, but the fact that the answer isn't obvious, that it's either Connor Noland or it's Brady Tiger, it's Connor Noland or it's Higgins, the fact that it doesn't just stand out and it's more obvious, isn't that telling of the greater problem?
Well, yeah, and we've been talking about that for a large chunk of the season, between the lack of ability to move runners at a lot of times, and then the length of your starting pitching. So, look, if they can average 5 innings a start out of Noland, Smith, and Wiggins, and say if they have to start McIntyre over there, and get decent work out of the bridge guys, and throw Zach Morris and Vermillion and a few other guys into that mix, and can get to the back end okay, they have a chance to win this regional. If they commit one error in all their games over there, they have a chance to win the regional. But to me, it's you get your leadoff guy on. I want to say twice or 3 times in the Alabama game, their leadoff guy got on and never moved off first base. You just have to have more productive outs. Hit ground ball outs. Don't strike out. Don't hit pop ups. So I know it's easier said than done. And I think having a week off, essentially 6 days, I think it's probably going to be better for them than the current whatever they were in, 6 out of 8 losses. So I think that's one of the neat things about a Dave Van Horn team and this program is that they could turn it on and come out of that regional like they did in 15, or they could stay where they are. But we've seen a lot more of them producing in the postseason than otherwise.
And I know this week may be different, but how do you read the body language right now? Is this team tight? Are they loose? What do you see when watching what we can see right now on the field and then away from the games?
Yeah, you guys asked me about where they're having fun. And I just saw some clips of the home run, the Lanzilli home run, and the Battles home run in the Alabama game, and the dugout was really happy. In between innings, when I'm at the game, it's hard for me to see what they look like coming all into the dugout, and so I can't answer the question honestly. Like, I don't know if they're having fun. Someone I was talking to in Hoover said the dugout didn't look, super jubilant. So my answer to you is I'm not sure if they're having fun, but I think that's a key component. And y'all, Dave said something on the Zoom we had with him on Monday after the selection that who's the leader on this team? And there wasn't just an answer. So in other words, they have guys who are a little bit more reserved. So leaders on your team, like veterans on your team, like Caden Wallace, Robert Moore, they're not, rah-rah guys, Connor Noland. And, and I think Michael Turner, as a guy, if he had been here a couple more years, would be, I think he'd be a quite outspoken and a good leader. And so some of the newer guys, probably like him, felt like, I could be a leader, but they don't want to step on toes in the locker room. And I do believe a guy like Battles, maybe he's just not outspoken, but somebody they need to, basically kick the team in the pants. And so I hope they get some of that in Stillwater because, I think their talent equates to being at least a super regional team.
Tom, let's talk some football with you. A lot of content coming out of the spring meetings, including a possibility of 3 permanent opponents. From a coverage standpoint and just a fan standpoint, what do you think Arkansas fans would like to see if that model happens? There are 3 permanent opponents in football.
Right. I've seen the wish list, and it usually includes, it ropes in LSU, A&M, Texas, or OU, some combo. But I do believe that Missouri is going to be an Arkansas opponent, and it's for geography, and it's certainly not a long-term deal. But I think in a way, the SEC would see that as a way to continue to grow their Thanksgiving weekend. So I think Missouri is going to be in it. I personally would like to see Missouri, LSU, A&M, but because OU would then become, actually it would be their closest rival, then I think you might likely see OU, Missouri, and either LSU or Texas. The long-term fans would want Texas. I don't know how it all shakes out on, who would also get Texas, but that would mean Arkansas would get both of the newcomers. So it's a tricky situation. Missouri, not with any real geographical or long-term historic rivals in the setup, and Arkansas being, the far western team in the previous iteration of the SEC. But you know what? Honestly, if it's any combination of those 5 teams, OU, Texas A&M, Missouri, LSU, I think Arkansas fans will be pretty pleased with that.
Tom, we had a good question by a caller earlier, Dave, that asked us, hey, what's the weakest link right now on both sides of the football? Tommy and I both agreed it's wide receiver and defensive line, specifically defensive tackle. Would you have any pushback on that, or would you say too?
Well, I mean, I guess weakest link in terms of numbers on the D line, D tackle. But here's the thing: they like what they got out of Isaiah Nichols. And, if Torian Carter is able to come back and play this year, and I still don't know the extent of his injury, then I think they'll be okay. It's just that they're going to be lacking depth. And they loved the explosion they saw out of the D front. And then, at receiver, there's the potential, but certainly not a Traylon Burks. I mean, Jaden Hazel would have to go a long way to reach that, and I don't think Ketron Jackson is to that point yet, and Warren Thompson's not. But I think between the combination of them all, receiver could wind up being a strong point. And look, let's don't underestimate Kendall Briles and his ability to scheme up and get the ball to certain guys. So I don't disagree with either point. And honestly, I know there's a bunch of veterans on that O-line, but when Stromberg and Wagner were sitting out most of the last couple of weeks of spring ball, that did not look like a huge forte, a big strength for them. And so I think the O-line is going to enter the year with some questions, and they've got to be better. They were, in what we saw, they were defeated more often by the D-line than otherwise.
Yeah. Tom, I'll go back to scheduling in the SEC for one more question. The permanent opponents that Ty asked you about was something that was kind of floated yesterday. The pods were kind of slashed earlier this week at the SEC meetings. How much of this is trial balloon talk that's going on in Destin, and where do you think they ultimately land with what kind of format for football scheduling moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do believe trial balloons because as much as the ADs and the presidents, they're inside the middle of it, and they're getting input from their coaches and everything. And and their fans. But I do believe hearing every viewpoint, every angle, and I'm talking about talk radio fans, everybody, perhaps you glean some nugget of an idea. I think there's a lot of different directions to go. I think clearly they wind up with probably a 9-game conference schedule. The 14 pods, I see some strengths to it, but then what do you do for a postseason? How do you bring each champion in and play 2 rounds? I don't think that's feasible.
Yeah.
So maybe they wind up with a half and half and division champions, and then you. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
I did not put that to paper before we got on the air, and I can't tell you. I'm not sure how they do.
And really, you just think about it in philosophy or numbers. Tell me how 3 permanent opponents is really any different than a pod.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's tantamount to a pod in my view.
Yeah, I mean, it may not be calculated in a pod for a division or something like that, but essentially you're playing in a 14 pod that includes your team if you have 3 permanent opponents. They may not be the same, but you're in that pod every year. And to me, division still makes sense from geography, and if I've went through this. If you line it up the right way, you can still keep all those natural rivals. The opinion that I think will count the most, Tom, when it's all said and done, is that of the TV partners. What does ESPN want? What are the games they demand? What are they paying for? That's ultimately the opinion that I think will tip the scale.
Yeah, and bottom line is, with the addition of Oklahoma and Texas, there's going to be fascinating storylines. I mean, all over the place. When South Carolina plays Texas, how fancy is that? That's not super, but it'll grow into something. Think about this. Florida OU, they probably played a great bowl game somewhere along the line. There's going to be fascinating games and matchups when they all come together. And no matter how it shakes out, it's going to be a fantastic league and super hard to navigate through, even for Alabama. If Saban's still here and 4 or 5 years down the line when those teams come in, it's still going to be hard. And you're going to see. I think you're going to start seeing a few more 2-loss SEC teams that are champions. But with an expanded playoff, that team and another, I'm sure, will be in.
Tom, good stuff. We'll recap the baseball weekend with you on Monday. Maybe there's even a Monday night game. We'll talk with you Monday morning about this time and figure it all out.
Sounds good, y'all. Have a good weekend.
Tom Murphy, Arkansas Democrat, Gazette Whole Hog Sports with us here on the Morning Rush.